Okay, so today is the feast. Of course, I'm going to try to speak mostly in English because we have an Arabic Bible study at 8, but I'm also going to translate some points in between in case there's anything that is unclear. And it's a short contemplation. Today is the feast, one of the feasts of Saint George, the Prince of Martyrs. If you attended the liturgy or read the Synaxarion of today, you will see that today was the feast of the placement of his body in his church in Old Cairo. And we all know that St. George, his martyrdom was very special in that it extended over the course of 7 years. It is actually believed that more than 40,000 people that were pagans were converted to Christianity because of him, because of over the course of his martyrdom, over these 7 years, including, for example, the Empress Alexandria, which tells us about how he became a real witness to Christ that others ended up believing also because of him, and they ended up being saved. And that's the meaning of martyr, of course, is to be a witness, being a witness to Christ. And it makes us ask the question, what glory is awaiting someone like St. George if he was able to bring that many people to Christ? And he brought all these people like a bride to Christ, زي عروسة كده للمسيح. All these people that ended up believing because of him and were saved, they were brought to Christ. And how much joy, of course, is there in heaven because of what he did, because of him bringing all these people to God. And of course, that's why he deserved this title, Prince of Martyrs. So what we want to talk about today or contemplate on today, just very few points about some meanings that are hidden in martyrdom that are relevant to us. Of course, if any of us is able to reach that level of martyrdom on the level of shedding their blood to Christ, that's a very high level. But on the level of people like ourselves, we want to see what is some of the things that are very relevant to us in their witness, in their martyrdom. So the first one is reciprocating love. That's the first point. The love of Christ and the continuous feeling of gratitude that we have to Christ. So the martyrdom, as you know, started with the cross. It is Christ who started. He's the one who took the initiative of dying for those he loves. He died for us. And the cross, of course, that our Lord endured is the culmination of his love toward mankind. If you look at this verse, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. And martyrdom, if you look at martyrdom, what is martyrdom? Martyrdom is really reciprocating that love to Christ, meaning our response to the love that Christ has given us. So the first thing, or the first meaning that we want, is if we feel that Christ loves us on a personal level, then reciprocating the love is the witnessing that we can provide. When we witness to Christ, it's really reciprocating the love that we feel that God has already given us. Actually, I was listening a few years ago to a nice sermon by Abuna Lo'a, and he mentioned something that really touched me. He was saying that he was talking to Abuna Bshoy Kamel at some point. They were praying a liturgy في المزار بتاع سان دميانة. And the San Damiana was buried under the table where they were praying, under the altar. And then after they prayed the liturgy, Abuna Lo'a was saying that Abuna Bshoy was full of feelings as he was praying. And then after the liturgy, in Arabic, in the words of Abuna Lo'a, Abuna Bshoy came and told him, أدي الحب ولا بلاش. هو المسيح على المذبح من فوق, giving himself, وهي she gave herself تحت المذبح لأنها مدفونة, كانت مدفونة تحت المذبح ده. فبيقول أدي الحب ولا بلاش. فأبونا لوقا says that years have passed after Abuna Bshoy passed away, and he was praying, Abuna Lo'a was praying a liturgy في مزار Abuna Bshoy, and Abuna Bshoy was buried there. And then he was saying that as he was praying that liturgy, he remembered exactly that story, in that Abuna Bshoy had it inside of him that he wants to reciprocate that love to God. And what he saw in San Damiana actually ended up happening to him as well, is that his body is buried under the altar where they prayed also the liturgy together. So this continuous feeling of gratitude to God and reciprocating the love is, of course, one of the important meanings that we wanted to take today in martyrdom. The second meaning that I wanted to discuss is, if you look at this verse, actually this verse, sometimes people from outside the church wouldn't understand what it means. If you look at from Matthew 10, Christ is saying, do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be those of his own household. It's a very, if you look at it from outside, it sounds very weird that Christ would say that. I'm not coming to bring peace on earth. Don't think that. I'm coming to bring a sword. What exactly does that mean? So the meaning that we want to take from this is, of course, the meaning of a war between those who accept Christ, those who accept him, and those who reject him. So Christ is the King of peace, as we know. The angels, when he was born, they glorified glory to God in the highest, peace on earth and goodwill towards men. He's the King of peace. So how can he say that unless he means that there will be a war because of him, because of Christ? What is that war? That war, those who refuse Christ and refuse his commandments and reject the principles and the teachings of Christ, will initiate a war against us and against the disciples and against the church. And that refers, of course, to the persecution of Christians. So that sword is not sword in the hands of Christians or the followers of Christ, but it's a sword in the hands of those who reject Christ against the people that accept Christ. So he's referring to this war between those who accept him, as we said, and those who reject him. The enemies are the enemies of faith, enemies of chastity, enemies of love, enemies of honesty. So this persecution doesn't have to be just physical. It could be physical, of course, but it could also be moral. It could be on the level of peer pressure, putting peer pressure on the people that follow God and follow Christ. For example, when a young person decides to live a life of chastity in a world like the world that we live in, there's going to be a war against him in this world. When someone insists on living pure, the whole world is going to fight him. So this is the sword, this is a type of sword that Christ is referring to. So that war, الحرب دي ما بين اللي بيمشي مع المسيح، هتقوم عليه حرب من العالم مش هيكون مش هيتساهل معاه. That's the second meaning that we wanted to take from the concept of martyrdom that is relevant to us. The third meaning, which is of course the meaning of the word martyr, to be a witness to Christ, witnessing. So martyrdom means that I'm asked to witness, but witness to what? I want to witness to the faith. I want to witness to what I believe in and what I live for. And through this witnessing to others could also believe. Others could also believe and end up following Christ. We saw this, for example, on the level of the martyrs, when the governors and some of the people that were persecuting them, they even ended up being Christians. We also see it when someone sees the way that a Christian lives, and then they know Christ through that person. So that's at least the level of witnessing that we want to talk about, that when people see that I live for Christ and they know Christ through me. And probably this is even the origin of the cross that some of the Copts put on their hands. عارفين لما حد بيكون حاطط صليب صليب على ايديه. It's a sign of pride and witnessing to their faith. So for example, in the old days, if the parents of a kid or a child were killed, the kid would still know that he is Christian, because he would see that, he has that cross that cannot be erased, that cannot be, it's part of his body. And possibly they could even accept martyrdom because this cross witnesses to the fact that they are Christian. So the third meaning that we want to take in today's reflection is that meaning of witnessing. Excuse me. The fourth meaning is the meaning of that we are sojourners in this world. What does that mean? So probably a good explanation, or not a full explanation, but it's some explanation to how the martyrs were able to accept that martyrdom, is that they had this mind of sojourners. فكر الغربة. They don't feel that they belong to this world. They are not part of this world. And that mind of sojourners is a very important thing for all of us to have. Look at this verse from Corinthians, where he says, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. So the person has that mind of sojourner. I'm not part of that world. And because the martyrs had that mind of sojourners, that helped them accept the martyrdom. Also, if you look in Romans, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. يعني لأن آلام هذا العالم الحاضر لا تقاس بالمجد العتيد أن يستعلم فينا. So they are not really attached anymore to the world, but they are part of heaven. They have this mind of sojourners. And that's actually something that we see even in the birth of Christ. When Christ was looking for a place for himself, there was no, Saint Mary, she was looking for a place and they couldn't find a place in the inn. And that gives us that from the very beginning, Christ is instilling in us that the person who wants to meet Christ should have this mind of a sojourner. The other meaning that I want to talk about, the fifth point, is the fact that martyrdom is an evidence and is a proof that Christianity is something that we can live, not something that is theoretical. يعني دليل. الشهادة دي دليل إن المسيحية دي حاجة ممكن تتعاش. So for example, if you look at something like love your enemies, all the martyrs, if you look at the life of the martyrs, all of them, almost exclusively, they prayed for their persecutors, right? All of them did that. Their suffering was not a mean to divert them from their virtues. So that's an evidence that one can love Christ to the extent from all his heart. From all his heart, from all his power, from all his understanding. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to give themselves. So that's an evidence, for example, to the virtue of love, of having that love to Christ, to the level of loving Christ from all the heart, all the power, all the understanding. That's an evidence that is put in front of our eyes. Sometimes people can try to make us doubt about things, but martyrdom itself is an evidence to us. If we want to look for an evidence for faith, an evidence for chastity, we know about martyrs of faith. We know about a lot of martyrs of chastity. This is an evidence that everything that we are taught in Christianity is not really theoretical, but it's something that we can live. The last point I want to mention about martyrdom, or the sixth meaning, is that martyrdom is really a culmination of virtues. What do we mean by this? What I mean is that it's important for us to remember that martyrdom is really the utmost level, especially when a person goes all the way to shedding they're giving their life to Christ. So the virtues that we can talk about are virtues of love, for example, hope, purity, having a solid relationship with God, faith. So to understand the meaning even better, it is hard to imagine that I'm going to be able to accept the martyrdom if I do not have, for example, full faith that when I'm dying for Christ, or I don't have firmness and hope in the recompense that I'm gonna be rewarded for this. It's very hard. Even those who die for any noble cause, for example, it doesn't have to even be a person dying for Christ. They do that because they have strong faith in what they are doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. It's also very hard to believe that someone who is self-centered, if I am self-centered and I only think about myself, it would be hard for me to give myself up for martyrdom because I'm centered around myself. It's also hard to believe that if I don't love Christ, for example, that I would give myself to martyrdom. It is also hard to believe that if I'm always conquered with my desires, that I would be able to leave myself to martyrdom. So the point I'm trying to get to in terms of this culmination of virtues is that to be able to become a martyr, we need to try to live the virtues of Christianity first. And of course, no matter what we do, nobody knows what's going to happen at the time of martyrdom. God is the one who gives us that strength, like Abuna Victor was telling us on Friday in the meeting of St. Paul. It's God who gives the martyrs that strength to be able to take all that pain and the suffering and so on. But on our level, what we have to focus on is that really martyrdom is a culmination of virtues. So what is put in front of us is to put in front of us the life of the virtues of Christianity, the love, the hope, the purity, the solid relationship with God, the faith, and try to grow in these virtues as we live. والمجد لله دائما أبديا آمين.